Hello, and welcome to today's webinar with the America-Israel Friendship League. My name is Naomi Reinhardt. I'm the Chief Development Officer of AIFL, and I'm delighted to be here with all of you today. We will be doing a very exciting deep dive into Caesarea, or Caesarea, no matter how you pronounce it. It's a beautiful location on the coast of Israel. Many of us have been there before. Some of us probably have not. We did discuss Caesarea a little while ago with our tour guide, Reuven Solomon, but our new tour guide, Shahar Fertig, will take us on another look at Caesarea, focusing this time on Caesarea's very important relationship with water. So some of you may be asking, where is Reuven today? Where in the world is Reuven? Luckily for Reuven, the tour groups have started to pick up. People are coming back to Israel, and they're starting to demand a lot of his time and the time of other tour guides in Israel for in-person tours around the country. But we have our other favorite tour guide in Israel, Shahar Fertig, who has a long-standing relationship with our organization as well. I'll let Shahar introduce himself in a bit. He's been taking tour groups around Israel for around 15 years. Many of you have seen his bio in the email that we sent out. He lives in a small area in Israel between the major cities with his family. And he's taken around many of our groups of Youth Ambassador Student Exchange, or YASI, students who are visiting Israel. And he has a really wonderful presentation in store for us today. So Shahar, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience as well? And in the meantime, I want to ask our audience, I know I already have many messages in the chat. We have people calling in from around the world. So please continue to say your name, where you're calling in from, and perhaps if you've been to Caesarea, what was your favorite part of the city? And if you haven't been, what you're looking forward to seeing when you hopefully do visit Caesarea one day soon. So Shahar, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Okay, thank you, Naomi, very much. My name is Shahar, which means in Hebrew, dawn. And as Naomi said, I guided the AIFL groups for some years with a lot of pleasure to know the community. I'm very excited to see all your locations here on the screen, from Miami, from Israel, from Holon, from California, East Coast, West Coast. Very exciting, very exciting. So I am excited. And yes, as Naomi said, I live in a small village called Amikam, which is located in the middle of Alona Forest. It's a natural oak forest in the center of Israel. Actually, then, in my opinion, it's the most natural forest of Israel, in the center of Israel, which was not planted by men. A remnant from a huge forest that used to cover the Sharon area of Israel some thousands of years ago. Shall I start sharing my screen?
Yeah, in a minute. Why don't you share with the audience a little bit about your background as a tour guide and how you got into that? I know you started with a slightly different career, and then you discovered a love of leading tour groups around Israel. So why don't you share a little bit with the audience about that history?
Okay. So 17 years old, Shahar dreamt of growing kidneys and hearts for transplants. So I aimed myself after I finished my military service. I went to study medical science, and in order to study tissue engineering. But as the years went by, and I realized that sitting in a lab is something that I can't do. I can't give this sacrifice for the science. It was too difficult for me. I went to travel a bit the world after the degree was ended, and then I came back to Israel, and the second Lebanon war broke. It was in July 2006, and in this war I was called to take care of Israeli refugees that could not stay in their homes, and the Israeli system could not support them, mainly people with some social problems or socioeconomic problems. And then I met some 120 young tour guides, and I felt I'm a part of this nation. And they were called to take care of the population for the days of the war in this refugee camp. And there I met them, and I fell in love. And I went right after the war, I made my first tour guide course, and then another course, and after becoming a tour guide, and with the time I guided tour for 15 years, mainly for Israeli and American audiences. I also made my master's degree in public health. I began a PhD on the way. I studied theater. So,
so pretty diverse background. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to study theater when I met an American donor for birthright, and I told her sometimes I feel I'm acting and I'm not like bringing my real Shahar. Do you want your people to have an actor on the stage? And she said yes. And I said okay, so I will go to learn acting.
And I know you wanted to share some slides from your family as well as part of the presentation, so people get to know who you are. Yeah. And I know you have a beautiful wife and 2 children that you like to take with you as you do your tours around Israel sometimes, and they love the country and seeing all the different parts of it as much as you do. So we're happy to look at those slides. And just so you know, Shahar will be showing this presentation, and we'll stop occasionally to pose some questions to the audience. Again, feel free to answer some of Shahar's questions in the chat. Our audience is never shy. We already have so many messages already. And yes, we'll stop occasionally to answer some of his questions and some of your questions as well. So I think, Shahar, we're ready to begin.
Okay. Hi, Pablo from Pardes Chana. We are neighbors. Yeah, you can start guessing my children's color of their eyes. And and here is just a topic of our talk today. Maybe if you've been to Israel, you may have seen this famous site where the Aqueduct of Caesarea breaks down and ends on its way to Caesarea. We will speak about this system, but as Naomi said earlier, more extensively. So a few more words about myself. Here on the right, you can see my wife, Abigail. She was born to a Canadian father and a British mother that came to Israel. They made Aliyah, and they met in an ulpan some 50 years ago in the desert of Israel, in Arad, and lived there. And so Abigail was raised in the desert in Arad. There in the middle, you can see Shaked is my older son. He's 4.5 years old now. He's very, how to say it, curious boy, a lovely curious boy. And on the left, Shaked, by the way, means almond. And on the left, you can see the Geffen. If you know some Jewish blessings, then you say Borei Priya Geffen every Friday, blessing the wine. So Geffen is the vine of the grape, the grapevine. Shaked is an almond. And they are both plants that connect to sanctity in Judaism, and also they are both located between nature, human culture, and God. This is how we chose these names. Here's another picture of Geffen in the winter, jolly girl, and Shakedi, and we can start now. So the famous aqueducts of Caesarea. Just on the left of this picture, you can see a bit of the Mediterranean Ocean, sea, actually, not ocean, Mediterranean Sea. And so this site is a beautiful site that you can just cross these beautiful arches, and the sea opens up in front of you. And this bridge led the water to Caesarea for 600 years, even almost 7. So let's tell its story. But first, I would like to ask you, can you share, if you know, what was the importance of Caesarea back then? What made it so special? What made it so important? And I will answer. Caesarea was built by Herod the Great. The year was about 22 before Common Era, before Christ. Herod built a city because there was a need to build a port. Here in the middle of the screen, just below the building, you can see this little lagoon artificial. This is the modern port of the ancient Caesarea. It's a small port that was built some 80 years ago, but the Herodian port was more than 4 times bigger than this one. And most of it sunk to the sea. And if you know a bit of ancient history and you went 3,000 years backward to the days of King David and King Solomon, in these days when you wanted to build a city, you must had 3 things. One is a source of water right inside the city or next to the city, really in a very short proximity. The second is a road that you will be connected to other cities and to humanity. And the third thing was a bit of an elevation, so you can protect yourself from anyone who attacks. Caesarea was built in a different period. This period, humans, Roman Empire, we already built a city not with what we had, not because we have water and a road there, but because we need it strategically. So this Caesarea was built in order to build a port that will help to ship the wheat that was grown on the Nile in Egypt all the way on its way to Rome. Rome back then was of 1 million people, more or less. And Caesarea was built from scratch, almost. Herod made something that nobody did before. He brought ash from a place called Pozzola, next to Napoli, in Italy. And this special ash reacts with water and consolidates. So first time in human history that anyone used this technology to build a huge port into the sea. He built it on the sand and sank huge pieces of concrete to build this port, and which had a great economic value. You can see here on top of the screen the theater of Caesarea, renovated. Some parts of it are the seats were renovated to host modern concerts, and on the bottom you can see the Herodian palace with its 2 parts, one on land and the other one in this half island. And if you have sharp eyes, you can see there in the middle of the sea, there is a fresh water pool. If you can see my cursor here, there was a fresh water pool that Herod used. Of course, there was a building around it, and fancy, beautiful palace with another part of here, and the horse races right here. The city was ready in the year and was dedicated to Caesar Augustus in the year 9 before Common Era. So where did they get the water? Because they built a city that cannot have enough water for a city, and they needed to get water from afar. And with the years, the 600 years that Caesarea was the capital of Israel after the destruction of the second temple, of the temple Herod built. It was destroyed in the year 70 Common Era, many years after Herod already died. Until then, it was a city of a port, And after the Jewish temple was destroyed and the Jewish independence was ended, the Romans settled Caesarea as the capital of Israel. And they named Israel Palestina. And the red, the blue, and the green lines are lines of different periods of and different systems of water that led the water to Caesarea. The first one began here in this point, and took water from this second spring, and in a place called Shumi or Shuni. Until today, there are beautiful ruins there, and the water were led on an aqueduct that crossed the valley, went by the coast. Here, this is in the Mediterranean Sea, and all the way to Caesarea. Later, the water was not enough, so another extension was built. They estimate that all this was built after Herod already died, because on the scripts we don't have Josephus Flavius does not describe an aqueduct in Caesarea. So it wasn't a Herodian project, but later. And the third, the second is the blue one that was built already in the Byzantine period, some 300 years later. And the green is the last, a simple tube of clay. And I'm going to take you now on a little journey that I made especially for you to one of my favorite places. This is the oak forest by my village that surrounds my village, actually. And here I parked my car and I went off to show you the head of the springs in the beginning of the path of the water. So you can see some oaks and pistachia trees. And here are some bee houses. And I'm turning around. And here I see suddenly a bush with a beautiful blossom. This is the blossom of the caper, like the capers that you eat pickled. This is the flower of the caper, and what you eat is the flower buds. And here is the secret gate that leads us to the well. Most of the plants, most of these plants are thorny raspberry plants. And before the last winter, last time that I've been there, the road was completely open. These are raspberry flowers and fruits. The path was completely open, but as the winter and the spring are over now, the whole road was blocked. And here on the video soundtrack, you can hear me crying because of the thorns that stick into my legs on the way. But here we go inside. Beautiful fig tree that I can see there on the bottom. These are already still raspberries, and here is the fig leaves. And we are going really into a lush part of the country. See how everything grows so beautifully. So the fig leaves, the thorns, and here we arrive to the head of the system. But before that, another flower. This is called in Hebrew Olesh, and in English, this is chicory. So this is the flower. This is what you made like a replacement for coffee. If you don't like coffee, chicory coffee. And we go on and we reach together the brim of the well, which is called Ein Sabarim, the spring of the Sabra, the prickly pear. And you can see the beautiful stones, cut of the stones, how accurate the building is. And I remind you, this is 2,000 years old well, an unknown site for most visitors of Israel. You can see on both sides, I show you an entrance and an exit of water because underground canals were built from within this well to raise the amount of water that it collects. And I'm taking you down the ladder a little bit. And let's go down there. You can see up there the roots of the fig. And bring down the ladder. In my village, every time that you can't find your dogs, people tell you, go check the well. Maybe tell. And in the water, I don't know if you can see, it's difficult to see, but it's full of larvae of mosquito and other insects that are swimming there.
Shahar, someone's asking where exactly is Ein Sabarim in Israel?
This is just come to my village in Amikam, and I will show you. So, search for Amikam. Google Maps also know Ein Sabarim. You can see there the entrance to the underground canal. But yeah, it's once you come here, you can write me, and I will send you the. If you make the effort to come to this village, I'll send you the location. And you get a coffee if I'm at home. So this was the first well. You can see here in front of you a fig tree that grows from within the wall of the well. And here is another picture of it. And this is a scheme of what we saw. You can see here. You can see that my cursor, right? So this is what we saw, and this is one little canal that goes to bring more water from within the rock, and the water goes on. The canal was dug underground for 6 kilometers, which is 4 miles. 4 miles of a tunnel that was dug underground because this well is located high on a hill, and the Romans. Of course, it's still a Jewish state, but it's a Roman work. The Romans want to take the water all the way to Caesarea. Caesarea, here in this map, you can see the stacks on the horizon. This is Caesarea is here. On aerial distance, it's 10 kilometers, which is about 7 miles away. And the aqueduct that was built from this point is taking some 13 miles, which 4 of it is underground in order to keep the elevation of the water. Because if you let the water flow down the hill, then you lose the advantage that you can take it for 17 kilometers or 13 miles. Because if you want the water to go so far away, you have to keep a slope for so many miles. So the water will actually flow. So in order to keep this slope, they dug tunnels underground to keep the slope so it will be optimal. This site is called Mei Kedem, or Ancient Waters. It's a tourist site in which you can come with your tour guide or with your bus, and you can go down and walk in these tunnels. Here are, and I'm taking you all the way into the tunnels. So you can see, it goes like a person can walk. It's about 6 feet tall. You can see my little children like to walk there in the summer days. Here is a Shaked, son, he's waiting there in the water, and he's curious, he's asking questions. I went back to take him, and he asked me, "Is this the place where they put the candles when they dug?" I say, "Yes. You see these little niches? These are for candles." The digging was so slow that every 2 feet they have a place for a candle, because they dig underground, and every 2 feet they put the candle and they dig. I don't know, for a day or 2 or 3, until they go another 2 feet deeper. This is another view of the same tunnel. the water goes deeper and deeper, and if you go the whole way, it will get to your waist. It's a beautiful attraction for summer days. And you can see here on the left this little fence and the light of the day. The builders, they dug every let's say 100 feet or so, they dug a shaft that they can take the earth out, and they can bring air inside. They can take the earth outside, and air can come in. Then it's easier to go up and down, and so they just built another shaft and another shaft and another shaft for 4 miles. And the last, I wanted to show you some of the. This is another shaft, and some of the plants that grows on the sides. And we go through the water. In these ancient days, the water there, this whole canal was full of water. So if the deepest part is going to get to my waist, back then it would get to my chest or my shoulders. Yeah, so this is it. And this canal goes from here, from the top. It says come all the way down. It take another spring water and another spring water, another spring, collects springs until it connects to the older part of the aqueduct. The aqueduct that was built above the ground. Let me ask you, how do you think you can measure the slope for such a long way? 2,000 years ago, without satellites, without lasers, how do you measure the slope so you can know that in such an enormous project that thousands of people are working on it for years to bring water to a city, how do you know you don't make a mistake and calculate the slope right? The slope, by the way, was 3 promille, which means that for every kilometer, it went down about for every let's do it this way. For every 1,000 centimeters, it goes down 3. How do you calculate? You can share if you know.
So feel free in the audience to answer Shahar's questions. He's asking about how does one calculate, years later where this was, and some people are answering in the chat if they're asking if the sun can be their guide or shadows.
Wow.
Or the trees. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure today we can use the sun and the shadows to do it, but to calculate it, but I'm not sure. But it sounds amazing idea. I already want to go and try it. But the Romans went on, keep it simple. They made, you can see this is a wooden frame that is perfectly accurate with 90 degrees all sides. And you can see the little strings that are hanging here, one string here and another one on the other side, and one here on this side. And here on the wood, it says the degrees. It says where is 90 degrees, exactly, like I don't know if they said 90 degrees, but it says the line that is completely vertical. And with the tilt of the string has a little plumb here. A weight on the bottom, and so it goes straight in the ground. So this way you could measure exactly the right slope that you need. How you calculate for long ways, you can see that this stick, which has the marks of height, and you can see the man here on the bottom. He looks through 2 holes. One hole is here, and another hole is here. Like how do you say it? What guns have to aim through? How do you call it?
The eye. I don't know the name.
Yeah, okay, you got me. So they can look through it. It's completely straight, and then with the 2 points, and then first you stabilize it, make sure that it's on the right angle, and then and then you can measure the distance between this and that, and slowly for 13 miles they go. Every time another 100 feet and another 100 feet, and calculate all the elevations and making a map of the whole way, distance and elevation. And if there was wind, for example, and you couldn't use those strings because the wind is so strong, so here on the top there is a place for water. It's a little water basin, and by the way of the tilt of the water, you can say where the water goes. But this is a Roman technology that was used everywhere. So another question I'll ask you: did they make mistakes on the way? Did they have what do you think that they did make mistakes? And I guess the question is already answering. Maybe any one of you know what mistake they did on the way. And here is the story of the big mistake. This piece of the aqueduct that you can see here I can show you here in a better slide. You can see on the distance, you can see the Mediterranean Sea, like with a blue stripe there. A big town, the only Muslim Arab town that is located on the coastline of Israel between Jaffa and Akko. It's called Jisr Azarka, and you can see the aqueduct. On the left side, you can see some houses of a village called Beit Hanania, and you can see that the aqueduct goes through the screen all the way to the distance. It gets to the hill of Jisr Azarka. It crosses the hill of Jisr Azarka from within. It's a sandstone hill. So they dug another tunnel. They crossed the hill to the other side, and the aqueduct goes later all the way this way to Caesarea. But here in this valley, you can see this aqueduct, and it had a problem. But many years after it was built, let's say it was built around the year 50 Common Era, AD, and 300 years later, all this area that you can see in front of you was flooded. Why it was flooded? It was flooded by on purpose. The Byzantine, which are, I don't know how much you're familiar with the history, but the Byzantine people are basically the same people like the Roman. It's the same monetary system, but since the year 324 AD, they started to build churches. This Roman Empire started to build churches instead of pagan temples, churches for Jesus. And this is where we mark the change between a Roman Empire and a Byzantine Christian Empire. During the Byzantine period, the population of Caesarea grew so much. By the way, sometimes I say Caesarea. Caesarea is the original pronunciation, and that's how we call it in Hebrew. So they reached the amount of 50 or 70,000 people. That's the estimates. A large city, and one assumption says that they needed more water because the population grew. But another theory says that they needed more water, and they needed a big flow of water in order to clean the sand that got accumulated in the Herodian port. We are now about 350 or 400 years after the port was built. The earthquakes, the storms broke the walls and the foundation, moved the foundations of the port. The port collapsed, but it was still used, and it had an immense importance for the Byzantine Caesarea. But they couldn't build it. They didn't have the power that the Roman and Herod had 400 years earlier. So they used the ruined port, and sand was accumulated inside the port. So they needed more water. In order to get more water, they needed to take the sand out. And for that, the theory says that they needed a large amount of water. That's why they flooded this valley, and we will learn in a second why. So what was the mistake that they did? This valley, the soil is silt, and this silt, once it got soaked with water, the earth started moving, and the aqueduct sank. So once one piece of this aqueduct, this piece is about 1 mile long. So from the 13 miles, one piece in the middle is sinking, and you don't get any more water to Caesarea. The water flow stops. So here you can see that they built, in the days of the Byzantine period, they built a bypass. It goes to the left or south, and here it bypasses this part of the valley and connects again over here. Of course, this was another huge effort to build it after 400 years, and the fact that they had here a big lake of water that led immense amount of water to the port to Caesarea, and still on top of this lake they tried to rebuild another aqueduct. The theory made by a person called Yeshu, which is the Hebrew word for Jesus, a Jewish guy from our days. He says they must have fixed this because this was fresh water, unlike the big lake that its water was brackish. So this was drinking water, and here he says, it's his theory, this water was used to clear the port. Just next to this village on the left, you can see on the aqueduct this sign that says that this was built by the 10th Legion Fretensis. The 10th Legion, Roman Legion, is the same legion that destroyed the Jewish temple, and its symbol is the pig, the wild boar. So, which is I believe that for Jewish people, the pigs are so unkosher because shrimps is also unkosher. But the Jewish people see the pork as the worst. I think it has something to do with that the legion that destroyed the temple. This was his symbol, and it says that this was made by Adrian, the Caesar, by the 10th Legion Fretensis. That's what the sign says. You can see here the remnants of the eagle, of the Roman eagle, the symbol of the Roman army. And down here below, you can see at the goddess Victoria, the goddess, the Roman goddess of victory, holding another sign that says that tells dedicates it also to Adrian. So so I will ask you now, who do you think that actually built the aqueduct? Who actually worked to do it? And going along the aqueduct, you can see the different signs that tells us who built it and in honor of who.
So we're seeing from the audience, people are answering that it was perhaps Jewish slaves. Someone said Hebrews that built the.
I think that they just did not trust a Jewish slave to build such an important task. Maybe in the earlier days before the temple was destroyed, maybe then it was built by Jewish workers. It's possible, but we don't have much of documentation. And the aqueduct, when you look at it, it goes like two aqueducts that are touching each other. One that is on the, let's say, on the eastern side has no signs on it. This was the first part. It was built some years after Herod, maybe 50. And this one, the western one that faces the sea, you can see many, well, at least 10 signs that tells us who built it. So maybe the first one had also signs, but there was there's no evidence. If there was, they probably took it off. Or maybe one day when it will break, we will find it in the middle, hidden. But here you can see sign after sign. This stone is now, it was taken from the aqueduct, was placed in the Rockefeller Museum, which is located in Jerusalem. This was in the British days before the independence of Israel. It was the British Archaeological Museum of Israel, a beautiful place until today. And here you can see another sign that tells us that this was built by the 6th legion, Roman legion that was called Penata. This is the one that we saw, the 10th legion Fretensis in the honor of Hadrian. And this one is located if you go to the Caesarea beach today, you can see it inside the aqueduct as well. It's completely erased. There is no word left there. And there is a belief that this was made by the 20, it's a belief, it's a like scientific belief, that this was made by the 22nd legion, and its name was erased because they lost the war against Bar Kokhba. The Bar Kokhba revolt was in the days of Hadrian. The 22nd legion was destroyed by Bar Kokhba, and maybe because they lost their honor, their name was erased. This is the theory. So these are the two parts of the aqueduct, actually 3 parts of the aqueduct that I was talking about. A was built right after Herod, B in the days of Hadrian by the Roman soldiers. These Roman legions were brought here to control the Jews and the Samaritans after the revolts. So in order to make sure that there are no revolts, you bring the legions. And these legions are, when they don't have a fight or a revolt to stop, they build. And this is the end of the answer. So the first was the A. Some 70 years later, B was built, and some 200 years later, when B was blocked and the water did not flow anymore, they built another. Look how small it is. The city is losing its importance as a major city in the Roman days, and there is just a little water that is needed later. You see the small canal there on top. The height of it is about 8 meters, which is 24 feet above sea level. So if you remember, we spoke about the elevation. They took the water from the hills of Alona, and they dug a canal to keep the height so they don't go down the hill. They dug the canal for 4 miles, and then they went on a bridge, and they managed to bring the water all the way to Caesarea, and still it was 24 feet above sea level, so it can operate water fountains and bathhouses and reach most of the city. And here, this is an aerial view of the aqueduct as it reaches this famous photo that we started with. This is where the aqueduct build is broken because the sea took the shore and the neighborhoods that were all around. In the peak days of Caesarea, all this land over here, this is the new Caesarea, which is like Israeli development hills, more or less. All this land was full of houses, and when you walk here through the bush, you can, and on the sands, you can just look at the sand, and especially after rain, sometimes you can see ancient coins coming out of the sand. You can see pieces of clay with beautiful designs. and basically all this area was not excavated. It's part of Caesarea that was not excavated yet. The estimate is that 10% of Caesarea was excavated, the main public structures. Okay, so here I made so what I wanted to show in this slide is that here, this is the newer, shorter, which is called the lower aqueduct that was built in the Byzantine days. And this was the one that led the water to clear the port from the sand and from the brackish water of the lake. Just for a little comparison, was this aqueduct the biggest? What was so important of it, and why is it so famous? And here I took for comparison a Roman bridge from Nimes. This is the tallest one. It's 48, almost 50 meters or 160 feet tall. This is the tallest Roman bridge. So Caesarea is not the tallest. It's not the longest because here in the aqueduct of Valence to Istanbul or Constantinopolis was led for 280 miles. But what is said about the aqueduct of Caesarea that it was made in supreme accuracy, and the cut of the stones was perfect molded, and the quality of water is exceptional for the Roman Empire entirely. Okay, so here is I see that our time is getting shorter, and I want to finish the story of this lake that I started to tell you about. Two rivers flow here. The Taninim Crocodile River flows all the way here, and this is the path where the river goes to the sea, and the Ada stream also. And here on the north, there is another stream that is called Dalia stream. It goes here, and from here it goes all the way to the Mediterranean Sea over here. As well, there are hundreds of sources of water, of brackish water, springs that are scattered around this valley. This is quite big. This is, there is an argument of how big this lake was, but it's between 1,500 acres to 2,000 acres. These are the estimates. And what did the Roman want to do? They said, but this is the Byzantine, okay? This is the period, 4th century. They said, we want to have a lot of water. What for? Do you remember? What is the water for? The theory? Okay, I will remind you later. And they built a first dam right here, which is about 1,000 feet long. A small dam. This dam over here is about 2,700 feet. And they block the water of these three rivers, and right here, this is the point where two rivers connect. Sorry, two rivers connect here, the Ada and the Crocodile, and from here they flow together. So here another dam was built, and the lake was the water of the lake was accumulated, and they wanted to lift the water of the lake so high so it can reach Caesarea with a high water pressure. They managed to reach the water, which originally was 9 feet above sea level. They managed to lift it 20 feet above sea level, building this lake. And this is some excavation that shows you the periods where, or the proof that there was a lake there, because today there is no lake. So these are deposits of calcium and salt, and the black ones are from the rainy seasons. And here, this is new post-lake silt that was there. That's how our archaeologists know to date the years when this lake was functioning. And here is the dam. This is the small dam, the 1,000 feet dam. And you can see here on the right side of the dam, you can see the canal that led the water to the lower aqueduct. And here, this complex has 6 flour mills that use the power of the water as they run to Caesarea so before they are used in Caesarea, they can also move the wheels of wheat mills over here and to produce flour to the city. This is also a beautiful site that you can walk and visit today and walk through the canals and the trails. The nature is there. And this is the canal. And you can see here some new construction of wood showing that's where and how these flour mills were located. And again, the higher aqueduct, the first one that we spoke about, and this is the second that led the water of the lake and made the first aqueduct sink, you remember? This is a view of it from inside. It's a closed canal. Most of the canals of the aqueducts in the Roman Empire had a triangle roof. This is a unique round roof that says to be formed in order to preserve the pressure of water, so the water will come into the city with a high pressure. And why? To clear the sand from the port. You can see from outside how it looks like. You can actually climb on it quite easily. And this is the levels of the water. The first spring is 20 meters above sea level, 60 feet above sea level. So for 13 miles, it goes just about 40 feet down. And the second spring system was 30 feet above sea level, and the tallest spring was 180 feet above sea level. That was used in the first. This is called the Unfinished Aqueduct. This is a piece of aqueduct which is located in Binyamina town, the next town to my village. And you can see a preparation for an aqueduct that was built, and then they stopped. Maybe wrong calculations. Maybe the budget was gone. Nobody knows. It's called the Unfinished Aqueduct. And here it is when the park was done. Maybe I think it's time for questions. Answers.
Sure, thank you, Shahar. This is wonderful. We're getting a lot of comments in the chat about how informative and interesting this is. And I know for me personally, and for many of our viewers, we've been to Caesarea many times, but we did not get under the ground like this and to see below the surface all the history of the water and the aqueducts in the city. So thank you for sharing all this. We're getting many questions. You mentioned that the water level had been going down, from your shoulders to your chest to your knees. Is this simply evaporation, or is there something else going on with the water system there?
No. So today, because it's like a tourist attraction, they took two sections of, I estimate, maybe you walk there 500 feet or 600 feet. You go underground through 3 shafts that was built from the top. And the water today is maintained, the water level is maintained in a way that tourists will enjoy it, visitors will enjoy it. It's full of school children and people from all over the world come to work there. So the first half is suitable for younger children. So my 2 years old can cross it. And then I go out with, I take her out from the shaft. And the older children and adults can go all the way to the end. In the hot days of the Israeli summer, it's cooling you, and it's an attraction. But there is a slope there. There is a slope that, from some reason, the Romans that built it, they needed to dig the slope, and the slope creates the depth. So it's the same water that flows, but in some place it accumulates, and it's a dent in the rock.
Got it. And are there towns in Israel that are trying to replicate these aqueducts with modern equipment? Someone is asking, are there other aqueducts of this kind that are still being built, whether in Caesarea or in other parts of the country? In Akko, someone asked. Or is it unique to Caesarea? Yeah.
was that first system unique to Caesarea?
Mhm.
So it was unique in the quality of water and in the accuracy of the cutting of the stone that it was made. But other than that, it was pretty a common thing in the Roman Empire to build an aqueduct to a city. You build a city, it grows, it doesn't have enough water inside, you need to bring water from afar. Or you want strategically to build the city in this place because there is a nice place for a port, then you need to bring the water to it so people will live there and operate the port. So it was pretty common to have an aqueduct. But what was the first half of the question?
If any towns are trying to replicate these aqueducts and create new ones using more modern equipment than in the past.
So today, when if you would build such a thing from stone, it will be from Disneyland or for tourism. Today, when we want to bring water, we take we pump the water from the aquifer with machines, with electric pumps, and we lead them usually in plastic or iron tubes to where we want them. We purify them. There's a purification factories, and also we desalinate the water of the Mediterranean Sea so we can have fresh water to drink it today in Israel, because you know it's mostly desert country. So, but to end this question, the answer to this question is that yes, we still build some aqueducts from concrete, and in the same path of this tunnel that I was walking in with my children that I showed you, of this aqueduct, outside there is a concrete canal that was built by Israeli water, the water authority of Israel, and it collects the rainwater that falls on the hills, so it will not flow with the crocodile river to the sea. We catch the water, it's being led in a concrete aqueduct, some, I would say, maybe 10 miles away, and there on a sandy area, it's being spilled to create a lake. And the purpose of this lake, this is today, the purpose of this lake is that the water will seep, will go into the ground and will enrich the coastal aquifer. So we have more fresh water to pump, and they will not just go to the sea. Another question.
Well, I know we're very short on time, and we're getting a lot of. We're continuing to get questions and comments from the audience, but maybe one final question is just for those who are traveling again to Israel now that the skies have opened up a little bit for us tourists. How do people find these aqueducts? Are there tours underground, overhead, and planes? Someone is asking. How can people see these aqueducts in Caesarea and elsewhere?
So first of all, you have my email down there. I will be happy to answer questions personally if you have them. Those sites are, you can just Google them and look for the names. You can see them on Google Maps. Some places are more difficult to find, like En Sabarim, the well in the beginning, the place where the aqueduct sank. If you want to see it, it's and to walk it, it's less known, so you will find less data on it. Always taking a tour guide is a good idea, and asking if you go with a group or with your community. If you organize a tour, you can ask on your itinerary to see this and that. But back to what I first says, Google knows. Just write the name.
Google knows everything. So thank you, Shahar. On that note, we really appreciate you leading us on our first ever virtual tour with Shahar Fertig. I know our audience had a wonderful time. We always have a huge audience for these tours, and today was no different. So thank you to our very active and engaging audience. If anyone would like a copy of this webinar for yourself or for your friends or family, please email us at webinar@aifl.org. As Shahar said, you can feel free to email him directly with any questions. He put his email here. It's shahar.fertig@gmail.com. We can't do these webinars without your support. So if you'd like to support us financially, we try to keep all of our webinars free for our audience, but we very much appreciate your donations. You can donate online at aifl.org/donate. Thank you so much for contributing. We will see Shahar again in the near future for another virtual tour. And in the meantime, join us as always for our next webinar, which will be on July 6th for a program featuring a special theater company in Israel called Curtain Call. We've done a few theater webinars, which have also been very popular, and we look forward to our next one. So thank you everyone for joining us on this Sunday. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you again to Shahar.
Thank you, Naomi.
Goodbye.